Our top story, United States says that Russia appears to be deepening its defense cooperation with Iran and has received hundreds of one-way attack drones. Citing newly declassified information, White House said that the drones were built in Iran, shipped across the Caspian Sea and then used by Russian forces against Ukraine. White House spokesperson said that US had information that Russia was receiving materials from Iran required to build a drone manufacturing plant. John Kirby said that the UAV facility could be fully operational early next year. The White House also released satellite imagery of the industrial location, several hundred miles east of Moscow, where it believes that the plant will probably be built. President Joe Biden's administration publicly stated in December that it believed Tehran and Moscow were considering standing up a drone assembly line. The new intelligence suggests that the project in Yelabuga region of Tatarstan has moved beyond conception. The US previously sanctioned Iranian executives of a defense manufacturer over drone supplies to Russia. Iran has acknowledged sending drones to Russia, but says that they were sent before Ukraine's invasion. Moscow has denied the use of Iranian drones. Kirby said that the transfers of drones constituted a violation of UN rules, and the United States would seek to hold the two countries accountable. UK, France, Germany and the US, as well as Ukraine, say that the supply of Iranian-made drones to Russia violates a 2015 UN Security Council resolution enshrining the Iran nuclear deal. Under the 2015 UN resolution, a conventional arms embargo on Iran was in place until October 2020. Ukraine and Western powers argue that the resolution includes restrictions on missiles and related technologies until October 2023. They say that it can encompass the export and purchase of advanced military systems such as drones. A US advisory issued on Friday highlighted key items sought by Iran for its development of drones, including electronics such as processors and controllers. And for more on this, we are now being joined by Dr. Gilbert Doctorow. He is an international affairs analyst, author, and an historian. He's joining us from Brussels. Welcome to the broadcast, sir.
Thanks for inviting me.
Dr. Doctorow, now White House is citing newly declassified information. They're saying that drones or uncrewed aerial vehicles, UAVs, that's how they're called, were built in Iran, shipped across the Caspian Sea and then used by Russian forces against Ukraine. Now, if that is true, how concerning is that for the West and the allies of Ukraine?
Well, let us concede that it is highly possible that the information released yesterday by the United States is accurate and credible. What I don't understand is why this would be news. The United States has done everything possible to bring Iran and Russia together by its sanctioning both countries in the most incredible manner. The sanctions against Iran go back more than a decade. The sanctions against Russia, of course, are the most intense applied to any country in the world. Now, aside from that point, there is a bigger point here. The United States calling out the possibility of Russia receiving and using drones from Iran is another example of disinformation in the sense of diversion. It is an attempt to draw attention away from the fact that Russia is the world's biggest producer of many of the munitions, if not nearly all of the munitions, that are being used by its army in the campaign in and around Ukraine. Russia is the world's largest producer of artillery shells. They had a store of several million, maybe 10 million shells before the operation began. Considering that the United States produces maybe 20 or 30,000 shells a month, this gives you a sense of the Russian strength as a military force in the world in a conventional war, ground war, for which NATO very peculiarly did not prepare itself while doing everything possible to provoke Russia into the action it took in February 2022. So Russia is the largest producer of the munitions that are the decisive fact in this ongoing war. And to call attention to some drones that Russia may or may not have received from Iran is precisely diversionary. It is taking us away from the essentials of this war.
Right, you're saying that it is part of disinformation and diversion, but White House is also saying that Russia is working to produce Iranian drones within Russian territory and that the factory could be fully operational early next year. Is that also part of diversion, sir? Because if that is true, how do you assess the deepening of defense cooperation between the two countries?
I see this deepening defense as a direct consequence of American punishment of both countries. Why would one imagine that these two countries would fail to cooperate when they are both under enormous economic, political pressure from the United States? This is a direct parallel to what is happening in the developing close relationship between Russia and China. None of these partnerships, neither Russia and Iran, nor Russia and China, were foreseeable or necessary. In fact, in both cases, both the Chinese and the Iranians had a definite preference to find an accommodation with the United States and with the collective West. It was only the intense pressure applied by Washington on Europeans and on the collective West to sanction and punish Russia, China, and Iran that have brought these countries together. So if you want to look for causality, it's in the West.
Okay, if the causality is in the West and Russia, Iran, Russia, China are being drawn closer because of the actions of the West, United States and its allies, how do you think that the US and other Ukraine's allies can contain or put brakes on this Iran-Russia defense cooperation, which will work in their interest? Right now you are saying whatever they are doing is working against their interests. They are drawing these countries closer to each other. So what are the options on the table of US and other Ukrainian allies?
Well, your question is very relevant. As a matter of fact, in the last week, we read news that the United States is making another approach to Iran to see if they can resolve the issues that led to the Americans' withdrawal from the UN negotiated agreement on inspections of Iran's nuclear program and assurances that it would not go in a military direction to create a bomb. This question of reopening talks and re-examining relations with Iran that came into the news in the last week, that is a perfect indication that there are some people in Washington who understand the idiocy of the predominant policy of punishing and sanctioning Iran in the hope that it will collapse or will turn into it on itself and be isolated from the rest of the world. That is a failed policy, and I'm happy to say that some people in Washington do have their wits about them and understand that and are trying to correct course. But in my estimation, it's too late. These are the policies of these countries are like a major ship, a major warship that cannot turn on a dime. It took a long time for Iranian elites to give up their hope of an accommodation with Washington and a minor cooperation with Russia. They gave it up, and they are not going to turn around just because they receive a wink from Washington that we won't be so tough on you. We can restore the pre-existing agreements, and thereby we can lift sanctions. That won't work. It didn't work when the United States gave a wink to Venezuela about 6 months ago, when they were in dire need of additional compatible oil resources for American refineries, which they had lost because of their sanctioning Russia. And they approached the Maduro government with offers of conciliation and will lift some sanctions if you just ship us oil. It did not work. These countries are pragmatists, and they know that a word from Washington today is worth nothing tomorrow.
All right, Dr. Gilbert. Dr. O, always a pleasure to have you on the program with your perspective. Thanks very much for joining us.
And thank you.